Think about a house that you've poured your entire life into building. From the outside, it looks perfect, totally solid. But what you don't know is that deep inside the walls, termites are silently at work. They're just eating away at the core structure. You don't hear a thing, you don't see any signs, and then one day, it seems to come out of absolutely nowhere. The whole house just collapses. It's a really powerful way to think about a specific model that's been developed to explain how some relationships break down. It describes this quiet, hidden process of decay that happens long before the sudden catastrophic end. So, what are we really looking at today? This isn't just about a one-off event or a simple case of cheating. We're going to examine a very specific framework that's been laid out to describe a methodical pattern of behavior. It's a process that really challenges a lot of our conventional ideas about how and why committed relationships sometimes fall apart. In this explainer, we're going to walk through that model step by step. So, what happened here is that a systematic model was put forward. It details how one partner in a committed relationship might methodically, almost clinically, dissolve that bond, while at the same time finding and securing a new one. This framework doesn't look at this kind of betrayal as just an accident or some moment of weakness. No, it frames it as a strategic operation. It suggests that what looks like a sudden, impulsive decision is actually just the final step in a very long sequence of planned events. Now, what really changed with this model was the perspective it offered. It kind of shifted the whole conversation away from seeing betrayal as just an impulsive mistake or a simple sign of unhappiness. Instead, it reframes the whole thing as a calculated replacement strategy. It describes a secret process, one that stays hidden from the other partner right up until the very end. This is what makes the final separation feel like a bolt from the blue, when in reality, the storm had been gathering for a long, long time. To really get a handle on this model, you have to understand where it even came from. It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's basically a serious attempt to find some kind of predictable pattern in the very messy, very complex, and often painful world of human relationships. It tries to map out a sequence for something that might otherwise just seem chaotic and random. People really started to pay attention to this kind of explanation because it offered a potential answer, a pretty unsettling one, mind you, to a very common story. So many partners, and men in particular, would describe being completely and totally blindsided when their spouse decided to leave. They'd often say they thought everything was fine, right up until the moment it was over. This model was developed to try and explain that feeling of suddenness, to give a structure and a name to a process that just felt completely inexplicable. And this is where the framework connects to a much bigger conversation. It plugs right into theories from evolutionary psychology. These are the ideas that suggest that a lot of our modern behaviors, a lot of our choices in relationships, might be influenced by these really deep-seated, ancient instincts that were shaped over thousands and thousands of years. The model basically argues that these instincts are still running in the background, underneath all our conscious decisions and social promises. Okay, so before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the model itself, it's really helpful to just paint a picture of the normal world of assumptions. This helps us understand the conventional beliefs that this framework is trying to challenge. This is the baseline understanding of relationships that a lot of us operate with. So in the common traditional view, commitment and marriage vows are seen as constants. Loyalty is this foundational virtue, an unconditional promise you make. The general assumption is, look, if you're a good person, you work hard, you provide for your family, then fidelity is just what you expect in return. This view treats loyalty like it's a fixed part of someone's character. It's a moral choice you make once, and then you stick to it. The idea is simple. A promise is a promise, no matter what. And in this traditional view, a relationship is seen as fundamentally secure unless there are huge, obvious problems, constant screaming matches, abuse, total neglect. If those things aren't happening, the foundation is considered solid. So in this world, if infidelity does happen, it's usually chalked up to a spontaneous lapse in judgment, maybe a moment of temptation, or just a clear, recognizable unhappiness. It's not usually seen as part of some long-term hidden strategy. The cause is seen as something immediate and visible, not something that's been quietly developing for years. Okay, so now we turn to the core concept of the model. It argues that the real process isn't obvious at all. It's a secret underlying mechanism that's operating in the background, completely invisible to the other partner. The whole premise here is that the breakdown is basically a covert operation. The departing partner, according to this framework, acts almost like a secret agent inside their own relationship. They're gathering information, they're making plans, and they're managing their emotions in a way that completely hides their true intentions from the person they share their life with.
So this suggests it isn't something that happens overnight?
Exactly. The model says this is a slow, methodical process, definitely not a sudden event, and it points to a specific driving force behind this secret evaluation, a concept from evolutionary psychology called hypergamy. The way the framework defines it, this is an instinctual drive to always be seeking and securing a partner of the highest possible perceived value. Now, this value can be based on a lot of things: status, money, genetics, social standing. The key idea here is that loyalty isn't a constant. It's a variable that depends on the perceived value of the current partner compared to all the other available options. All right, so that brings us to the absolute heart of the model itself. It breaks this whole hidden process down into 4 distinct sequential stages. If you can understand these stages, you can understand how a relationship, from this point of view, is systematically taken apart from the inside. The 4 stages are: 1, the erosion of respect and attraction; 2, the recalibration and search for alternatives; 3, the justification protocol; and the final stage, the discard. Now, what's really fascinating here is where it all begins. According to this model, the process doesn't kick off when a new person shows up on the scene. It starts much, much earlier, with the death of respect for the current partner. It starts with contempt. The signs of this first stage, erosion, are described as being subtle, but they're consistent. It might look like constant criticism over little things, or dismissive body language, like eye rolling when their partner is talking. Maybe they start making negative comparisons to other people. But the most critical sign, according to the model, is the complete disappearance of physical intimacy. A dead bedroom isn't just presented as a problem on its own, but as a primary symptom that attraction and respect are gone. Why would a partner not notice these signs? And that is the absolute key, isn't it? The other partner often does notice, but they explain it all away. They'll chalk it up to stress from work, being tired from raising kids, or just, a normal rough patch in a long relationship. The source material gives the case of a man named Duck. He was a classic good guy husband, accommodating, kind, but in his wife's eyes, he lost his edge. When she left him for her boss, her explanation was just devastating. She said, "You were a good friend, Duck, but you weren't a man." He had mistaken her growing contempt for simple fatigue. So this erosion of respect then naturally leads into stage 2, the recalibration. Once that respect is gone, the model says the partner's instinctual drive to find the best possible option just gets reactivated. They start to reevaluate their situation and quietly scan their environment for other options. This is where the model brings in the idea of monkey branching, the strategy of not letting go of your current branch, which is your relationship, until you have a firm grip on a new, better one.
What's tricky here is that the signs of this stage can actually look like good things. There might be a sudden, intense focus on fitness and appearance, new clothes, a lot more time at the gym. New social circles might pop up, ones that are separate from the couple's shared friends. And, most critically, this is when deep emotional connections with other people, often a coworker or just a friend, start to form. This is described as emotional infidelity. The partner starts transferring their loyalty and their emotional intimacy to someone else long before anything physical even happens. The case of Ba, an engineer, is mentioned. His wife started working late on a project with her new boss. He was totally supportive, just thought she was being ambitious. In reality, she was building an emotional bond with her replacement for over a year. Stage 3. This is where things get, really psychologically complicated. It's called justification. The model suggests that in order to do something that goes against your own values, you have to create a story that makes you the victim. The departing partner can't see themselves as the villain, so history has to be rewritten to make the current partner look like one. This internal story then justifies the actions they're about to take.
How is that achieved?
Well, the framework says it's done through some pretty intense psychological tactics. To build their case, the partner might intentionally start fights over small things because they need the other person to react badly to confirm this villain story they're telling themselves. If the partner gets suspicious and confronts them, powerful defensive tactics get used. One is gaslighting, making the partner doubt their own sanity by saying things like, "You're being paranoid." Another is a technique called Darvo. You deny the behavior, you attack the person confronting you, and then you reverse the roles of victim and offender. All of a sudden, the person who is asking questions is on the defensive, feeling guilty, and their investigation is completely shut down. And all of this leads to the final stage, the discard. Once that new branch is secure and the new relationship is seen as a stable upgrade, the old one is terminated. What feels like a sudden lightning strike to the blindsided partner is, for the other person, the carefully planned final act of a long campaign. The conversation is often cold, clinical, with those classic lines like, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore," delivered with a finality that just leaves no room for negotiation. And the model adds one last, pretty harsh layer to the stage. It's not just an emotional discard. It's often a strategic one. The framework argues that the departing partner has frequently been planning all the logistics of the separation, talking to lawyers, getting finances in order, all while still living under the same roof. The story of Hung is used as an example here, a man who ignored years of warning signs. The final reveal came when he found out his wife and her new partner, who was one of his own business associates, had a plan to take over part of his company in the divorce settlement. It was a complete ambush, both financially and emotionally.
So after going through this four-stage model, we're not really left with a judgment on whether it's universally right or wrong. Instead, we're left with an awareness of a particular way of looking at relationship dynamics. It provides a language and a structure for an experience that a lot of people have found incredibly confusing and chaotic. It offers a potential map for a territory that once seemed completely uncharted. In the end, this framework doesn't give you any easy answers. It just offers a pretty grim map of a potential reality, leaving you with awareness, not certainty. It quietly summarizes what's now understood from this one perspective, without trying to predict the future. And it forces you to ask a really difficult, reflective question. The model's central idea is that loyalty isn't this fixed moral constant, but a conditional variable that's always being reevaluated based on perceived value. If there's any truth to that at all, what does that mean for the very foundation of long-term commitment and trust in a modern world that's just full of options?